What is up? Welcome back to the podcast. So today it's going to be a little bit different. Myself and Owen are going to have a conversation around three different topics. So what I'll do first of all, I just let Owen here introduce himself.
Hi, guys. Thanks, Eric. Thanks for having me on. My name is Eoin Cremin Fitness. I've been in the industry for 13 years almost now. September 2012, I got my first job in the industry. I've been around a while, seen it all, seen all the different bits before Instagram and before TikTok and all that came along. I suppose, look, I'm an online coach. I specialise in helping people lose weight and improving their health and fitness related habits in a sustainable way. And prior to working as a coach, like I would have worked as a PT, I ran a gym for a while there as well in Cork, and I've been independently working now as an online coach since December 2022. I was kind of doing it on the side up until then, and went fully online since then. So it's been a ride. It's been a good laugh. Lots of twists and turns, lots of mistakes that I've learned from as well along the way. But I run my own business now online, and delighted to be doing a podcast with you.
I actually didn't realize you were at it 12 years as well. I'm similar enough. So
Yeah,
I'm going. Do you miss the gym floor?
I do and I don't. Um, you'll relate to this yourself. Like, if you're training someone for like one half an hour a week and you only have that short time with them, you can't get across a whole lot of information when you're also trying to train them. And then, there's 168 hours in the week. You can't really help them with their other 167. So their nutrition then mightn't be up to scratch. Their other habits that you want to help them with. Yes, they get that half an hour, that hour that you train them or whatever it might be. But online, I certainly see far better results because you can help people with all the other habits outside of their training as well, which adds up to a bigger picture. But yeah, then the other side of it is I do miss it a little bit because the face-to-face interaction. I love the socializing of it. You do miss out a little bit because lonely me now is just me, my four walls, and my laptop screen nowadays. It's a bit different. You still see people face to face when you're training in the gym, so I don't miss it that much. I prefer online slightly, but there are aspects then from a social perspective that I do miss a little bit.
So I should give up the gym floor, should I, and just go fully online?
You might go a bit crazy. You might go a bit crackers. So I think hold on there as long as you can and give yourself the variety would be my advice.
100%. Will we get into the first topic?
Savage. Yeah, let's drive on. I'd love it.
All right, so the first one is how we can be less reactive with food when emotional. This is definitely something now when we were talking earlier about this that I see amongst my clients as well. But yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this one.
It's the biggest thing. We've seen it over the years where even years ago when we were younger coaches, we might have given out maybe plans and stuff and give people those strict plans to stick to. But I think the coaching industry's evolved so much now that we've become very much educators where we're pulling away from that and we're trying to get people to be more flexible with their food and give them more choice and more responsibility with their own food. But with that can come too many options. And when people have that broader choice, they can sometimes slip down into rabbit holes where they say, "Oh, sure, I'm sticking to my calories, sticking to my macros," but half of their food could be, processed junk food that they then attribute a bit of guilt to. Or if they're having a day where they're highly stressed, feeling a bit sad, that pre-cooked meal or that prepped meal that they had from yesterday that's in the fridge ready to be reheated, the stress or the emotion takes over, and suddenly they're ordering a takeaway instead because they're letting their emotions cloud their judgment or cloud their planning. And that can be quite common. And again, it's something that people shouldn't feel guilty about. But, putting things in place to make sure that doesn't happen too often is key. So I guess if someone's listening to this and they're an emotional eater and they're reactive with their food, where when things are going well and they're not so stressed, they're not so sad, they can be, oh, I'm perfect. Yeah, the food is going well. I'm sticking to what I planned out on eating today. And then one little bit of stress sets them off and suddenly they're 7 dairy milks in and they're feeling full of regret. That's something that is quite a big challenge for people. So yeah, like you said it yourself, you come across it a lot. Is there anything you say, here's your golden rule when it comes to helping people through that phase initially when they start off?
Yeah, I like the first thing that jumped to mind there when you were talking as well is that when people have this kind of association with food where they think it's bad and they neglect themselves then or they restrict themselves of any food that has say no nutritional value. Now I often talk about this is that like we have food that has nutritional value, we have food without nutritional value, and most of the time if we have food with nutritional value, then we're in a good place. What's your thoughts on that yourself as well? Would you like In terms of, would you give any guidelines to clients in terms of how much food they should have with and without nutritional value? And what are your thoughts on good and bad food, people labeling foods that way?
Yeah, no, I think it's very important to highlight that. Like the more educational understanding you have about food, the less emotional you're going to feel about it. If you label food as good and bad because you might be very educated on your food, then you could fall into the trap of saying, well, now because I've had a bad food, I feel guilty, and that guilt is going to lead to more shame and more emotional eating. Whereas when you take that step back and, like you just said, you know, not labeling food as good or bad and labeling it more as nutrient dense or low in nutrients, suddenly then you say, okay, well, I can factor that in. And I think I always go back to the 80-20 rule. I think it's a great way of managing your food without zoning in too much on calorie intake today, because I do want to talk more about like the mindset around food. But it is important. And if you're sticking to a certain calorie target or a rough calorie target, and you have cravings, genuine cravings, like that you felt like all day you wanted a chocolate bar. Got to the evening, you see, I still want that chocolate bar. I still want that dairy milk with my cup of tea. You can have it and accept that it's not a bad food. You can have it, and you don't need to label it as anything shameful or anything that you should feel guilt over. And if it fits into your calories, better again. It could be the same calories as, a bowl of porridge or a banana with peanut butter or whatever you might have as a good food, you might label it as. But if it's the same calories, and the rest of your day is full of protein, fiber, you hit your water target, you got a workout in, you got it for a stroll, there's absolutely zero reason why you should ever feel guilt in terms of that. And that's the key thing. I don't think that labeling food as good and bad is going to help anyone. It's very important that we get into the mindset of saying, here's a balance. 85% of my day has been really nutritious food. And yeah, I can enjoy a chocolate bar, a bag of crisps, whatever it might be, and factor that in and still progress and get results.
Yeah, I'd often say that, like in terms of like we don't want to label food as good and bad, but I'd often say that food without nutritional value is good to have in the diet because if we have that type of food in the diet, then it's more enjoyable, it's more sustainable, we're more likely to lose body fat and keep it off doing the way that we're doing it now. Yeah, 100% agree with that. The other thing there, you can ask the question back on me as well in terms of the triggers of emotional eating. And what are your thoughts around this? Because when I have people say check in when they do their check-in sheet, the most important part of that for me is their sleep, their stress, and their mood, and zoning in these areas. Because I feel when people don't have these areas where they need to be in terms of where their sleep is where it needs to be, or if they're highly stressed or they're not looking at managing their stress, then that can often trigger emotional eating.
Yeah, very much so. They're actually the first two questions I'd ask if a client was coming in for a consultation is sleep and stress. And the reason being, if you're not getting enough sleep, your hunger hormones aren't going to regulate. The next day, you're going to be starving and cravings are going to be through the roof, right? So that's the very basic one, first of all. On top of that, then, obviously, if you're not getting enough sleep or your sleep quality is quite poor, your energy the next day is going to be pretty low. So your chances of actually doing a workout, or even if you do get a workout in, the quality of it isn't going to be great. So sleep then has a knock-on effect on all those processes, plus your ability to recover from training. So if you've done a workout and your sleep is consistently poor, it's not going to lead to any bit of sustainability for you. And again, then when you're tired, your sugar cravings are going to be higher. You're going to start reaching for more sugary foods naturally, and that won't align then maybe with making some progression with your health. The stress side of it then as well, most people are stress eaters. So if you're highly stressed and you're not managing your stress, we'll say, getting out for your walks when you should be, and you're choosing to sit on the couch and scroll on Instagram instead, if you're not managing that stress, a highly stressed person, once again, is going to more likely reach for the biscuit tin or whatever's in the press as maybe a coping mechanism for that stress as well, to suppress the negative emotions or the feelings of sadness or regret or whatever it might be. And managing them is so important. So, look, you won't lose weight by getting 8 hours sleep a night, but you'll create the conditions to allow for a better chance of success. And that's the key.
I agree with that. And the other things there, like you just touched on, how can we give ourselves the best opportunity to be successful? As you said there, it does start with the sleep. It starts with, manage stress. If you are going to zone in your nutrition, like how much protein you're getting in every day, how much fiber you're getting in every day, how much water you're getting in every day, and are you planning, are you preparing? So there's a lot of variables to this, but giving yourself that best opportunity to be successful. I know that some clients will ask this as well. They're thinking it's 9 o'clock at night, they're really stressed, they haven't managed everything the best that they could. So now they're just sitting there and they're trying to resist the urge to overeat. Is there any advice you'd give someone in that situation to create space to allow them to make a decision that is in line with their goals?
I do look at the environment is key, right? And it's sometimes for people it's really simple, and sometimes it's not so simple. So like if it's 9 o'clock, you haven't managed your stress all day, you haven't got that walk in, you feel a bit of regret because you missed your workout, your water intake is low. You're only one positive decision away from getting yourself towards managing that stress. Now it's 9 o'clock at night in the middle of January and it's freezing cold and it's raining outside. Maybe going out for a walk isn't an option, right? This time of year, it's bright until about 10:30. You could, right? And that's something you could do, right? Getting out of that environment. But in a smaller range, I even say like change your room. You sit in your living room every night, and then is that close to the cupboards in the kitchen, in the next room where you can reach out? Is it a case of okay, let's just sit in a different room? Is that something that could make it less triggering for you, or could like break that cycle of the environment that you're in? Is it a case of like doing a task that will distract you? Because it could be a case that you're sitting there thinking of okay, this is what I always do. I sit here, I watch this show on Netflix, and when I'm doing that, I'm usually picking at something, and that's what's starting to go into the head right now. Don't watch the show on Netflix, change the show or do something else. A funny example for you, a male client of mine, I got him into knitting, which sounds bizarre, but he was like, when I'm sitting around, like, I feel like my hands just need to be like in a bag of crisps or picking at biscuits or something, and I can't stop myself. So like, all right, we got to keep the hands occupied. And I got him into knitting, and he was like, it was the best thing ever because it took him away from thinking about food. He had to focus on the knitting, and then as well, it kind of tired down his mind. So he was like, I felt really relaxed in going to bed because I had to focus on something that wasn't the screen as well, by the way. And it really, really helped them. So sometimes doing a non-screen related task that just changes your environment and changes your routine. If you're used to watching your Netflix, picking at something next to the kitchen, and you're just in that cycle, and if it's not an option to go for a stroll or something like that, where you feel like, man, I haven't got enough fiber in today, I haven't got enough protein, I don't feel satisfied, so cravings are kind of high, feel a little bit of stress, water isn't great today, I'm literally setting myself up for a bit of failure. You still can turn it around with, maybe just changing your routine in the evenings.
And so then the next question I can see a few of my clients asking me right now is that let's say that they didn't get that far, they didn't create space, and all of a sudden they found themselves that they've massively overeaten. They're sitting there now full of shame, full of guilt. What would you say to that person?
One good day doesn't make a summer, right? If you have a day where things don't go to plan, and things won't always go to plan, and that's something we must accept regardless of our goal. Not every day is going to go to plan, not every week is going to go to plan. But if there's a day where you have overeaten, you've gotten to a point where your sleep is poor, or the night before, you haven't drank enough water, fiber, protein, all the other variables aren't in a good place. And let's just say you get to the end of your day and you're like, I'm 700 calories over my target, didn't eat a whole lot of fruit and veg today. It's just one day. It's just one day. Like Eric, like yourself and myself, if it's a sunny day there now and we're down the pub having a few pints, have a burger and chips, we don't go from being in good lean condition to being overweight. It doesn't change like that. And the same way for somebody who is trying to lose weight and they've maybe lost a few kg and then they feel, I've had this terrible day. That doesn't unravel all your progress. It's just one day. You can just literally get back on the horse the next day. Set yourself up for the next day. Okay, well, look, today is done. But what am I going to do tomorrow to get myself back in the right direction? I'm just going to start off with a healthy breakfast and hydrate well from the morning, and that will set me up for potential future success. Rather than sitting there saying, I've had one bad day, I've ruined it all. Absolutely not. You've just had a bad day. Over a 365-day year, it means nothing.
Totally agree. Constantly find myself saying this to people that just because your goal is body fat loss, it doesn't mean that you always have to be losing body fat. And a reaction to these situations is what defines our progress in the long term. One day isn't going to, as you said, define our progress at all. 100% agree with you. You know what, I was thinking there as you were talking as well, because I get this from a lot of clients. Still, even to this day, with all the information out there, is it okay to eat after a certain time? And you have this person then that is, say, it's 9 o'clock at night or whatever. And I find that a lot of people can end up overeating. I know we're talking here, I suppose, about being reactive to food and being emotional as well. But if you are emotional and you're very stressed, but you've also thought or you're still thinking that I can't eat after a certain time, then aren't people just hungry then? And maybe they should have a planned meal at 8:30 or 9 o'clock every single night, whether it's a planned meal or a planned snack.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. From a point of view of even going to bed satisfied, the next morning you're not going to be ravenous. It might have a good knock on effect in the next day. in terms of like regulating your blood sugars even through the night. You get a better sleep. Having a decent meal, it's maybe something that's rich in magnesium that's going to be, it'll actually assist your sleep closer to going to bed. I mean, and I don't mean in like 20 minutes before bed. I mean like an hour, 90 minutes before bed. Isn't always a bad idea. And there's nothing wrong with eating late at night. Once again, going back to calorie intake, and I don't want to zone in on that word too much. Some people don't want to even hear about it, but it is important. So across the day, if your meals are, if you don't eat until later in the day, or if you have your final meal at say 9 o'clock, like you said, but you're still within your calories and you are you're roughly within your calories, you've ticked your boxes throughout the day. There's absolutely no problem with eating late. Like I have my final meal every night at about 10 p.m. and I'm in bed by 11 and asleep by quarter past, and that's kind of where I'm at. And that suits me. But there's nothing wrong with eating late at all. And it certainly isn't going to have any negative impact on your ability to lose body fat, provided that you're ticking your boxes day to day, week to week, more or less. I certainly don't have any impact with people eating late. I actually used to work with a guy, and he was very much into intermittent fasting, and he would have one meal a day at 11:30 every night, and he was in great shape, great condition. And then throughout the day, I know, and I'm not recommending this, but he would just kind of survive off water and black coffee. Now that's not sustainable or realistic for most people, but he was in great condition and he had all his meals right before going to bed. Yeah, your own thoughts, your own thoughts.
Yeah, no, I agree with what you said there as well, as terms of like what works for one person may not work for another person. And the thing about dieting, and you have this person who's having one meal but for the whole day, like when you said that to me, that's something I could not do. But if it works for a person, and that just that will probably work for very few people. But in terms of all other diets that people try and whatever, I never demonize anything that someone wants to try, but I'd always ask them, do you see yourself eating this way in a year's time, in 2 years' time, in 3 years' time? And then that's what you would have to look at. And then if it's like, yeah, I'm happy to do it this way, it's sustainable, it's enjoyable, Joe, happy days. But for the most part, and you'll be the same as me with the people that we work with, they like to have a little bit of joy in their life with an ice cream or a takeaway or a few pints at the weekend and things like that. And they're generally people that we attract, that we work with a lot of the time. But we'd often have people that say that would have came from different backgrounds, that would have, or different coaches that would have tried, the keto diet or tried intermittent fasting. And but the fact is, if they've come to you or they come to me, it hasn't worked for them. So it's time to try it a different way. Like I had a girl there a few weeks back that she came to me for coaching, and we had the coaching call or the onboarding call, whatever you want to call it. But she was adamant about getting a meal plan, and she wanted a meal plan from the start just to stick to it all the time. I'm not going to get into that either now today. It's probably topic for another day. But I actually refused her as a client. I said, you're better off just going working with someone else at the moment, because she wasn't open, Joe, to coaching. She wasn't coachable at that time because basically she'd been trying meal plans for the last 10 years. She still couldn't see that they weren't working for her. So for me, that was going to be an awful lot of work and something that I wasn't, willing to take on, because she wasn't willing to change and whatever. But basically, yeah, it comes down to what works for you, and
I think you're
so
right
be it.
though. I think you're so right there to not take on that client, right? And I think that's where that gap does need to be bridged with the wider variety of people. You don't need a nutrition plan. I think that's very important to repeat that all the time. You don't need a nutrition plan to lose weight. And you're going to find so much more value long term in being coached into how to manage your own nutrition rather than you just giving that person, here's a meal plan. Yeah, it will help her lose weight. But, if she was to finish with you after 10 weeks and say, right, thanks, Eric, what does she do then? Does she stick to that nutrition plan forever? That's not going to. Where does the food freedom come in? Where does the flexibility come in? Where does the education understanding come in? If she does deviate away from the nutrition plan, does she eventually or immediately feel guilty for, oh, well, I was working under Eric's guidance when I was sticking to that nutrition plan, but now that I've come off it, you then start questioning things. Am I wrong? I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have had salmon for dinner. I should have stuck to the chicken like Eric's plan said. And people then create a guilt that shouldn't even be there. Whereas, like you do preach about, you talk about food flexibility and you give people the tools to manage their own nutrition. That is going to be so much more rewarding long term for that client. But like you said, they have to be coachable. They have to be open to that process to even begin it. Because if people come in and they just want a nutrition plan, they're just limiting themselves, and that's what we don't want for them.
I have no problem with a coach like giving someone, a nutrition plan to start with, but I just don't get why they don't give them flexibility within that nutrition plan. So the way I would do it if I was going to give someone, I like to call it an example day of eating. And what I say to people right from the start, if they're tracking their calories, if that's something that they're willing to do as well, or something that I've decided that they should do, start tracking their calories straight away. So then if you don't have rice in the house, you can have something else. If there's no peanut butter there, you can have something else. And what you won't see on one of these meal plans or nutrition plans, whatever we want to call them, is a chocolate bar. And then what you said there, someone has a chocolate bar, then I've wrecked my meal plan. I might as well start again Monday, and it's Wednesday, and you're kind of saying, right? So there's no flexibility there, not enjoyable, and you're not teaching anyone. We again, like we had this conversation before we started recording, and I was saying we're coaches. We're here to coach people, not tell people what to do. So it is very important that we give people the tools to make their own decisions, no matter where they are. We know this, like as coaches, yes, we're always there to be on the end of a call or a text message or a WhatsApp, whatever, but we're not with people every single day of the week. So we have to provide them with tools so they can make their own decisions, and also that we can set them up for future success. That this is we're going to coach people for a period of time. It might be 6 months, it might be 6 years in some cases, but in 10, 15 years time, we want people thriving still and enjoying their health and their fitness.
That's it. This isn't a case that we're saying like nutrition plans are never an option. In certain cases, they can be. Like if I have a new client coming to my program, I will, if they're a total novice, just to give them that like structure and take away the stress, because again, there could be a lot to take on when they begin coaching. I'll make it as easy as possible for them, and I say, look, we will put you on a nutrition plan just for 2 weeks, just to give you the structure of like a skeleton of what balanced meals look like throughout the day, how to get your protein in, how to get your fiber in. And again, I will obviously consider foods that they want and that they enjoy, but I will be very, very upfront with them that after 2 weeks, we're gonna have 1 week of maybe a hybrid method where you're gonna begin to track calories and you can still use the skeleton of the nutrition plan. But week four, that nutrition plan is gone. You've got to fend for yourself then. And that's actually a really good experience for people because they've had the full nutrition plan for a couple of weeks. If they're a total novice, obviously, they've had the hybrid for a week and then they transition fully to flexible dieting. And even if that first few weeks of, say, tracking on MyFitnessPal, where they have to be creative themselves, even if that doesn't go 100% to plan, where they have days where they're way over their calories or they don't hit their protein target or whatever it might be, that's okay. It's absolutely fine because they're only getting used to that process. And you can then use that as evidence and say, okay, well, here's how you're going to increase your protein, or here's how you're going to ensure that you're staying within your calories the next week. And after a few weeks, they'll get the grasp of it. But I think the biggest word you said there on your point was planning ahead. So it's much easier to stay within your calories or hit your protein targets if you plan ahead. It's way easier to keep your nutrition in a good place if you plan ahead.
Like that's even outside of tracking their calories as well, by the way, what you're saying there. Yeah.
And it's true, yeah. Outside of that, just having a general idea of what you're going to eat tomorrow will make it so much easier. If you go to tomorrow and next thing you're like, I don't have a clue what I'm going to have for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I have no idea what I'm going to have for snacks. Chances are the quality of the nutrition will diminish. And then that can lead to a feeling of regret and shame to some people. And it shouldn't really. But at the same time, that can be prevented by just a little bit of planning a day in advance or 2 days in advance.
Question for you, right? So I'm fairly happy with my health and my fitness and how I feel and how I look. And I eat chocolate every single day. I cannot remember the last time that I didn't have some chocolate in a day. What would you say to me?
Brilliant. You're in a great place.
Yeah.
I do the same.
Because yeah, yeah. I think I wanted to make that point and ask you what you think as well, because I think a lot of people listening to this will, like, obviously we're going to talk about the emotional eating and the triggers, and we have cravings, and what it often say how best to kill a craving. Have what you're craving, you won't crave it anymore. You're less likely to overeat on what you're craving as well. And a lot of people still to this day believe that you can't have a bar of chocolate and lose body fat. And you mentioned a while ago as well, you have this bar of chocolate, it could be 100 calories, it could be 200 calories. It's still only 1 or 200 calories. But then some would have like an avocado that could be like 400 or 500 calories. And I'm not saying avocado is bad for you, but at the same time, still 500 calories. But yet we blame the chocolate bar for the body fat that we put on. It's just amazing that we're still talking about these things 12 years later from online coaching and whatever that we do. But it's there's a lot of information out there, isn't there? And it's very important to cut through the bullshit as well.
I was only talking to somebody about this yesterday in the gym, and I said that the potential for this industry, it could be the best industry ever. But unfortunately, when people can make money off an industry, they'll just manipulate the truth and they'll put out things about You see it on Instagram. Influencers walking through a supermarket with a bowl of cereal in their hand or a box of cereal, and they'll say, "If you want to lose weight, you got to stop eating this." And like, it's not helping anyone. It's just to get views and shares and likes, and they're targeting impressionable people who don't have a huge understanding of nutrition. You know, I have a bowl of cereal every day. I enjoy a bowl of cereal every day. Is it the most nutritious thing I could eat? Absolutely not. Do I enjoy it? Do I factor it into my day? Yeah, I do. Gives me a little bit of joy. It's convenient because I'm busy. I don't want to spend all day cooking either. It's important that we get that message out there. And I think we have to keep pushing that message because people do look at it like, oh, I've had a chocolate bar. That's a bad food. Now I've created a bad day. And if they just change their attitude and their mindset towards that and said, look, I really enjoyed that chocolate bar. Now I've actually got rid of the cravings that were bothering me all day, that I kept thinking about that chocolate bar. I'm not restrictive anymore. I feel a lot better about myself because I was starting to get really stressed because those cravings were so high. The rest of my day was actually really nutritious. I got a workout in. I'm well hydrated. People always zone in on the one negative, but they don't look at all the positives. And again, I always say to people when they do that, if I'm on a call with someone, I say, if you were chatting to your friend now, and your friend told you that you had they had this much protein, they had loads of fruit and veg, they had loads of water, they got a great sleep, they got a workout in and a walk, and then they told you the chocolate bar, and you started telling them that because they had that chocolate bar, they're a failure. Your friend wouldn't talk to you anymore. And I think when you put it to people like that, they're like, okay, yeah, I get it now. Yeah, I shouldn't be talking to myself that way because I had one chocolate bar when I ticked all my other boxes and still hit my goals for the day.
I use that line as well, like, well, how would you speak to your friend if they're in the same situation as you? Another thing there that I throw in as well is that I'd often say to people around things like chocolate bars and whatever else people like to have, I'd often say to them, don't eat it when you're hungry, eat it with a meal. So if we have like say if it's like whatever 1 o'clock and we're like, all right, I'm really hungry, I'll have a chocolate bar because I'm really hungry. A chocolate bar is never going to fill us and satisfy us. Low protein. Normally when we have a chocolate bar, we just want more of it, especially if we're hungry, because it's not going to be enough in one sitting. And I'd often say to people, if you're having a chocolate bar, have your lunch and then have the chocolate bar after, because we don't just eat food for fullness or for hunger. We don't eat food just because we're trying to lose body fat. We also eat food for enjoyment. And if we can time our food in terms of when you're talking about cereal, we're talking about chocolate bars, it can make a massive difference in terms of the volume, in terms of those foods that we each can have.
Yeah, I think it's important to develop that relationship with food too. It's not just about, it becomes too robotic. If you're always looking like, I have to eat this protein to keep myself full and to prioritize my recovery, and then I have to eat this food to fuel my sessions, and I have to eat this food then so my digestion's in a good place, it becomes like a chore all the time. And that's the other side of it. Like, there's nothing wrong with having nice food and enjoying yourself. I saw a really good reel a few months ago, and I mentioned this on a podcast previously as well. Intuitive Eating Ireland had it up where the woman was giving her two kids their dinner, spaghetti bolognese, but she also gave them donuts at the same time. And she didn't say you have to eat your spaghetti bolognese before you have your dessert. Because what she would have been doing there, if she did that, would have created the relationship of like, to eat the bad food, like the reward after, you've got to eat the good food. But there's no such thing as good or bad food as we spoke about. So what she was doing, she gave them the option because at the end of the day, it's just food. And the kids will grow up then without this relationship, like I can only eat this if I eat that. And they picked at the donuts, but they also have finished their dinner and they were satisfied after. In the same way that you said there, have a nutritious meal and then have your chocolate bar around that or whatever, rather than saying, okay, I haven't eaten for 3 hours, I'm craving chocolate, I'll just have my chocolate bar. Straight away, you're going to be hungry again. You're probably going to want a second one. And I think that's important to get across too, but also to be mindful of your relationship with food, that you don't always have to eat a nutritious food to warrant eating something that wouldn't be so nutritious that you would feel guilty about, because you shouldn't feel guilty about it in the first place.
It's so interesting what you said about that reel, because when we think about our own relationship with nutrition, and you probably went through this, I went through this, most people that we're working with would have went through this. They were told when they were younger, eat your dinner and you'll get something nice. Or else our parents would say to us, finish everything on our plate. So what they started to do was teach us to eat past fullness. And straight away they were already creating a poor relationship with nutrition. No, our parents didn't mean to do that to us. Their parents did it to them. They didn't mean to do it to them. But it's up to us to educate people, I suppose, to break that cycle. And it is a really difficult one, isn't it? Because if a child says to you, I don't want to have my dinner, but I want to have a couple of biscuits. And then you have to really choose your wording carefully. And I suppose I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on this. And I know we're going off topic a little bit again, but my thing here would be leading by example. is probably the best thing that we could do, but it's still such a difficult area.
It is like you don't ever want to fall into the trap of saying you can't have your. And this is for anyone with kids out there. You don't ever want to fall into the trap of saying you can't have the chocolate. Sure, you've already had one bar today. That's bad for you. That should never be something you say to your kids. But of course, parents, like you said, and our grandparents, and all the generations before them, they were coming from a place of like get some good nutrients into you first, and that was what they were trying to do. But and again, nobody's doing this out of badness. Nobody was saying to you, you have to have your dinner before you have your sweet treat after. Nobody intended to harm anyone else's relationship in the future with food. But it like you said, the wording is so key. So I think look, it's important to not be hyper focused on like firstly cleaning your plate. If a child or even an adult for that matter is full and they understand that they're full and they feel like, oh, you know what, I have a few bites left, but I'm actually grand there now. I enjoyed my dinner. That was nice. But I don't feel like I need any more. That's actually a really intuitive understanding, good understanding that they have with their hunger cues. And that's a good place to be. I think it probably does come from generations way back when where Ireland was a poorer place or in general people didn't have as much money. You eat what you're given kind of thing, and if you don't clean your plate, you're nearly given out to. Times have changed lots since then, and that's not the way it should be anymore. And that's probably why a lot of people are struggling with their weight because they feel like they always have to clean their plate, even when they're not hungry, and to be a far better served to actually eat until they feel a bit full and then stop. So if you are someone listening to this and you feel like I'm always told I have to finish my plate and clean the plate and whatever else, that probably stemmed from something when you were much younger. That isn't true. You do not have to do that, especially if you're now an adult or if you have your own kids. Pushing that narrative is not going to be any bit progressive to, any bit of a healthy relationship with food in the future. And it could even be, counterproductive if someone in the future is looking to lose weight. They'll always feel like they have to finish their plate. That isn't going to help them.
No, it's a great point what you made there because I know I mentioned like that when we're speaking to kids, but actually what you said there is that who's listening to this now, it's adults that are maybe working on themselves in terms of the way they feel and look. And what you're saying there is like just have that kind of observation. So are you still doing what you were taught to do years ago? So it's absolutely brilliant point. I knew we'd go off topic and there's a few things that we want to get into, but I gotta shift to the next topic, right? And I actually love this one, right? Because when I think back to my own journey and I think back to when I first got into my own health and fitness, really focusing in on especially my nutrition, and I've often said this that I had disordered eating. I didn't have an eating disorder, disordered eating, bit different. And one thing I remember, right, the topic that we're going to talk about here is that the way people use exercise as a form of punishment. And one thing here that jumped to mind when we mentioned this was that I remember having a bowl of Cocoa Pops, but I'd only do it if I do another workout. Not if I do one workout, if I do a second workout, I'll give myself a bowl of Cocoa Pops. That's what I remember. And that's when I was about, say, 24, 25, when I first really started to look after my health and my fitness. Contradicting myself there. I was looking after my health and my fitness, but was I really? So this is an interesting topic for me. So give me your kind of take on this one.
This is one I think we could talk about for about 2 hours. Like, firstly, going back to the food thing, right? With disordered eating and an eating disorder, yes, they're two totally different things. I think everyone's gone through some form of that along the way when they've actually tried to better their nutrition. So I remember when I did my first ever like strict nutrition plan, I got really lean, and then I went away on holidays, right? But on the holiday, when I was having things that like obviously I wasn't going to eat off a nutrition plan when I was on holidays, there was a sense of like, should I really be having this ice cream out by the pool? And like when I look back on it now, it's ludicrous. Yeah, you should have your ice cream out by the pool when you're on holidays. That's the whole point of it. That's the whole point of the holiday is to enjoy yourself by the pool, out in the sunshine, having an ice cream sounds absolutely glorious. But I couldn't enjoy it at the time because I was so focused on, is this the best food I should be eating? What's optimal was a word that was going around a lot at the time. And it was a disordered form of eating. And even when I got back from the holiday, the first thing I felt I had to do was go on the nutrition plan again, because that was the only form of success that I could feel worked for me. I was like, maybe I might even deviate a bit from the plan. And when I did, then I'd say, oh, that's not right. But it was right. It was great. And it was growth. But at the time, I just felt it very uncomfortable because I didn't have the clear understanding. And I felt the only way I could gain a bit of success was that, that strict plan that got me the success in the first place. But that was never going to last forever. In the same way as you there referenced the Cocoa Pops, only if you did two workouts. And that probably stemmed from somewhere. I did a talk a few weeks ago, and someone at the talk, we were speaking about these kind of things. Someone at the talk mentioned how when he was young, he was an aspiring boxer, and he looked up to this boxer, and he was reading about him in a newspaper, and that boxer he looked up to said he would treat himself to a Snickers bar once every 12 weeks. So then the guy at the event said to me, he said, you know, when I was young, and he think he was only 14 at the time, he would only allow himself to have a Snickers bar once every 12 weeks. And if he had more than one Snickers bar in a 12-week time frame, he would be so annoyed with himself. And he felt that was the only way to be successful. What he was trying to do was trying to better himself. He had the right incentives, he had the right mind frame towards, like, I'm looking up to this guy, I want to live like him. But what he actually created was a really poor relationship with the Snickers bar, and he felt, I can't have more than one every 3 months, which sounds mad. And he obviously realised that now, but as a 12-year-old boy, he was trying to do the right thing for himself. And at that young age, when we're so vulnerable and we're like sponges, we're absorbing everything and we're trying to do better, but we take everything in. He created that relationship with those foods and chocolate in general at that time. When he was 12 years old, he should have been saying, and I have my Snickers bar. If you want to have a Snickers bar every day at 12 years old, he probably could have, because he was running around like a madman. He was a boxer. And it's sad to see that, but that's so common. And nearly everyone will have a story just like that, in terms of something that they try to do to better themselves, but in a roundabout way, maybe created a poor relationship with a certain food or a certain food group.
Yeah.
To go on to the exercise point, like, actually, before we go to that, do you have anything to jump in with there?
Yeah, when you were saying that about the kid and the Snickers, I was actually kind of quite impressed, if I'm going to be perfectly honest. First of all, I know, like, you're saying, it's 100% correct, but for a 12-year-old, or was a 14-year-old, to do that and have the discipline to do that, incredible as well at the same time.
Yeah.
But as you said there, it's madness as well. Like, yeah, just I suppose, like, when I think back, yeah, I was like, exercising for me was punishment. I would actually see it as a form of punishment a lot of the time, not all of the time, but I remember with the weight sessions themselves. So I would have trained definitely once every single day where I would have lifted weights, especially now when I was first getting into this. And I remember, I think of the sessions that I used to do. And sometimes they even pop up there. I might have, I always used to print them out, and they might pop up at home sometimes. And the amount of exercise that I used to do, the amount of drop sets, the amount of time I spent in the gym, it was incredible, like, and I couldn't have enjoyed it. And I just think back to how hard I was training, and it was actually resulted in less results, if you know what I mean, because I was probably training too much. I wasn't able to lift as heavy because I was in the gym every day, sometimes twice a day. And even if I think about the cardio that I used to do, it was definitely a thought of how many calories can I burn here because I'm after eating this much today. And yeah, it wasn't right. I still see that with a lot of people that do come into us, especially earlier on. You'll see that yourself as well. And that's what we're trying to do, I suppose, is fix people's relationship with training in order to put them into, I suppose, a better place and train for better reasons and train for the right reasons. What way do you approach this with clients that do come into you that have this poor relationship with exercise and see it as a way of burning calories?
Yeah, like, you hit the nail on the head there. Like, it's never a punishment. You should never use exercise as a form of punishment. It's actually a reward. It's a reward for showing yourself what your body can do, to give yourself time to, like, it's nearly like an investment, like a pension. I always say, you're investing in yourself. Do a little bit of a workout today. You're going to feel better after, immediately. You're going to be stronger down the line. And it's like putting the coin into the piggy bank. You're going to keep investing and keep growing. What I'd say to people listen to this, if you're in the mindset of, I need to go to the gym now today, and at least then I'll burn off all those calories, and even if I do lose control of my nutrition, then at least I won't feel as guilty. That should never ever be your mindset. If you're going to the gym and you're lifting weights, your goal is to get stronger, to build muscle, build lean muscle tissue, to, improve bone density, all these other health factors that are not about burning calories, right? You burn calories walking in the door of the gym. You burn calories in your sleep. Don't look at exercise as like just burning calories, because it's a very dangerous position to be in. Look at lifting weights as a way of getting stronger, building muscle, and feeling good. Look at, if you want to burn calories, go for a walk, or do a little bit of cardio at the end of your session, or just monitor your nutrition in a more accurate way. If you're in the gym and you're saying, "Oh, I've been here now 2 hours, actually I'll just go back in and I'll do another bit of cardio on top of it," you're probably doing that as a result of guilt, not because you feel like, okay, that makes sense in terms of the rest of my day or the rest of my workout. You should never be punishing yourself with exercise. If you go out for a takeaway on Saturday night, I've seen it so many times with clients or just general gym goers. Sunday morning, they're in the gym and they're hammering themselves with cardio to burn off the calories that they consumed last night. It's the total wrong mindset. It's just energy. It's just energy. What I'd be saying to someone, if you go for a takeaway on Saturday night, go into the gym and increase the weights you lifted on last week because the excess calories are probably going to give you a bit of a boost. You're going to feel stronger. But don't be doing it from a point of guilt. Use it maybe as a point of, okay, I'm going to capitalize on the extra few calories I had to fuel a great session. Maybe the takeaway isn't the most nutritious thing you could have had, but it's still an excess calories that you can use to promote a good session. But never ever should you be going into the gym thinking, I've enjoyed myself a bit too much. Life is to be lived, lads. Life is about enjoying yourself. So if you did enjoy yourself on a Saturday night, you don't have to then combat that enjoyment by punishing yourself the next day. Absolutely not.
Yeah, 100% agree with that. And yeah, I know you'd often find that yourself as well. If you were out for a meal the night before and in the gym the next day, you do feel a bit stronger. Obviously enough, you have more energy. As you said, you have more energy to train. The other thing there that I want to pick up on is that I'd often like get asked this question in terms of like, what's the best way to burn calories? Am I better off going to the gym or doing something else? And the answer to that for me is that if you're looking to burn more calories, you're better off staying at home, hoovering the house, than going in and doing a weight session. And that's not to demonize, why we lift weights or why we do resistance-based training, but it's understanding why we're actually going into the gym. And one thing that did help me personally, to be honest, when I think back now of my own journey, and it's a realization over time, is like, why are we actually doing this? Why are we putting in the work now in the short term? Because you're like me, you're never talking about the short term. This is always setting ourselves up for the future, for the long term. And when I actually started to learn that I want to live a longer life with more quality. And the with more quality is the key there. I know that if you're lifting weights on a consistent basis, if you're looking after your health, your fitness through exercise, then you are going to live a better quality of life when you're older. I actually experienced this the other day, to be honest, because I did my first 5K in I don't know how long and timed it properly, whatever. I broke the 20 minute mark for the first time ever, right? So I was run a decent bit when I was in early 20s, and it's 20 years later, and I'm still improving, in terms of my times when it goes to running and whatever. Like, so age can hold us back, like if we let it hold us back. But if we're constantly working on ourselves, if we're constantly consistent in terms of what we're doing with our training, you're going to live a better quality of life even as you age. And if you don't put into work now, you're going to regret it in years to come. And I think that's where we really have to view exercise.
Completely. Like both my parents lift weights still. They're 65 and 67. They lift weights 3 or 4 days a week. And I always say to them how great it is to keep it going. And if you do something every week, you're still going to be doing it when they're 75 and 77. They're probably still going to be doing that. And they say to me all the time that they look at their own friends. Some of them are in wheelchairs or Zimmer frames because they just don't have that same lifestyle. The longevity, and I really do appreciate like my parents because they put in the effort so that they can live a prosperous life in 20 years still. When they're in their 80s, I have no doubt that they'll still be in the gym and they'll still be able to go for a walk and they won't need the assistance of a Zimmer frame because their joints are stronger, their bones are stronger, their muscles are stronger. You might have seen that reel recently. I did the rounds of last week on social media of the couple in their 80s and the wife was using like a rollator and her back was really rounded and all of her muscles were eating away at themselves and she had no strength. She couldn't support herself. And her and her husband got into lifting weights in the gym. And then it fast forward to 5 months later, I don't know if you saw it, and she was walking along with no Zimmer frame upright. And it was brilliant to see. Like I must say, like I nearly got a bit emotional looking at it, and to see someone in their 80s, obviously going and lifting weights is probably totally alien to them. But to do it and then see the results of it, even at that late stage in their life, that they can still progress. It should never be a limiting factor to anybody. And again, the earlier you start doing this, it's an investment to your future self. So you can get up off the toilet when you're 85 years of age by yourself. So you can get dressed by yourself. So that if you have a fall, that your bones are going to be strong. You mightn't break that hip that puts you into a wheelchair, into a hospital bed. And these are the things that people don't talk about. And maybe not enough from ourselves either in the industry, that we don't talk about these things to our clients enough. We talk about the here and now and what they can do to lose weight and look better. But the bigger picture is down the line, we want a longer quality of life, just like you said. And that's so important as well.
You made a couple of great points there. And like, first of all, like now is always the best time to start. It's never too late. And we had we have more and more people in their 70s actually coming in here to the gym to do personal training. And they're actually being sent here by doctors or by physios who recommended them. And I remember just a couple of weeks ago, there was a woman here. I'm not training her. One of the other lads is training her in here. And I was having a conversation with her. She was only here something like 2 or 3 weeks. And I said, how are you getting on? And she said, well, I can get up off the couch without pain. I said, what? I said, what do you mean? She goes, oh, before I came here, like literally 2 or 3 weeks ago, she said that I was always in pain trying to get up off the couch. But that seems to be gone now. And like little things like that, like it sounds like a little thing to us, doesn't it? But it's absolutely massive to be able to, get up off the couch without having pain. But then it just shows the potential that she has now, going forward, and she's going to be fitter than ever. And you mentioned her own parents in training, and mine are the same. Similar age, bit younger. I better add that in case my mother's listening to this. But they're in her training all the time, and it was actually a girl turned around to me in here when she was doing one of the classes, and she said that woman there is double my age. She didn't know it was my mother she was talking about, and she said she is flying it, and I am struggling here to get through the class. Just goes to show that that woman was only 30. She was talking about my mother who's in her 60s, and it was absolutely flying. But saw consistency, keep on going, and late age is never a limiting factor. Totally agree with you.
Never, no, and that's the great thing. Like, and it doesn't mean much to people right now, but if they can just really think about it, it will mean so much to them in the future, and it prevents so many other issues that they could come across. I wish more of my friends and people that I know that are my age would lift weights and do it for themselves in the future. And it really is so important. But like for that woman, the younger woman there who saw your mother lifting so well, I would think it inspires her that she can see, okay, that's what I want to be like when I'm in my 60s. So it's important that I keep this going now, even though it's challenging. And it's important that she doesn't compare herself to someone who's older than her as well. Different levels of fitness, different levels of experience. You know, that younger girl could definitely catch up. And the more she shows up for herself, she will. So even if you are in a class, if you're someone listening now and you go to classes and you look at someone else saying, oh my God, like they're so much fitter than me, they're so much stronger than me, they always do more reps than me, they lift more weight than me. Don't look at that as like you're any worse. They were probably at your position once upon a time as well. Be inspired by them, by their work ethic, by their consistency, by their mindset, and continue to show up for yourself. And don't look at like what they're lifting compared to what you're lifting, or how fit they are, or how they look compared to you. If you are going to compare something, compare the things like their consistency, their attitude, their mindset, and their resilience. These kind of things that we should aspire to be like, and use that as a motivator and drive, because that's what will get you to be at a higher level in the future.
Yeah, it's interesting you said that because that girl was absolutely inspired because she was thinking how hard this was actually during one of the fitness classes and she was really struggling through it. But what actually got her through her when she did look around, she said, "There's people here double my age that are flying it," and she just was asking that question: "If I'm consistent, what can I get there?" And you're dead right, like, and it is a big thing in the industry as well, isn't it? In terms of comparing ourselves to others, because what we see on social media. What advice would you give to someone that does tend to compare themselves to others and it is getting them down?
Write it down. Write down the pages. Write the name of the Instagram page that you look at all the time that you compare yourself to, and unfollow the page because it's destroying you. It isn't helping you get to where you want to be. And what it actually takes away from is your own appreciation for your own body. Our own bodies are amazing. What we can do. Not even about a workout, how we just survive, but in terms of like how we look, we get so zoned in on aesthetic goals too often. It comes from maybe a form of vanity, but also we just want to feel more confident in our own skin. And there's nothing wrong with that. But you're never going to have that influencer's body. Firstly, it's probably airbrushed and photoshopped and all this. And that influencer that you look up to that's in great shape is probably starving 90% of the day, right? And I think that's important to mention that. And I don't mean to be funny or bash any influencer either. They're in great shape and fair play to them. And they do inspire people to a degree, but they don't inspire the people who are always comparing themselves to others. Look at your own body. Ask yourself, is it stronger than what it was a year ago? If yes, that's a huge plus. That means your body's improving in terms of what it can do, how it can move. Are you more mobile? Have you lost a bit of body fat? Is it going in the right direction? If no, change the actions you're taking in terms of your nutrition and your training. If yes, keep doing what you're doing. Stop comparing yourself to someone else's body because you're never going to have their body. Well, I once spoke to another coach about this and I thought the point that she made was amazing. If you want their body, you don't just get their body, you get all their problems with it because you only see what they show on Instagram. You don't know what's going on internally. You don't know what's going on in their mind. You don't know what's going on in their personal life. If you want that and you want to take all the other bad stuff with it, be prepared because the grass isn't always greener. And what you have yourself Maybe you don't have the leanest body. That doesn't mean you're a failure. It doesn't mean anything negative. Just because someone's leaner than you, you'll be the first to say this. I think we've agreed on this in the past. Being leaner doesn't always mean that you're healthier. In fact, it rarely does. You're hungrier. You've less energy. Your training sessions aren't as good. Your sleep mightn't be as good. Your mood dips quite a lot. Your stress levels can increase at a faster rate. So stop looking at being leaner as being the be all and end all, and stop comparing yourself to other people, because you don't just get their body. If you want their body, you want all their problems with it, you probably don't.
Great point, because why are we doing this? Why are we actually looking after our health and our fitness? It's to improve the quality of our life and the way that we enjoy life. And as you said there, like you can be as lean as you want to be, but what comes with that? Like that's such a great point. When you were speaking there, what it reminded me of something that I kept on meaning to talk about, either here in the podcast or maybe on Instagram or somewhere like that. I was in the gym last week, in a commercial gym, and there was a girl in there. There was only like, it was a very small commercial gym, right? So it was easy enough to notice people around you and whatever. But she was in incredible condition. In all fairness to her, she was really, really lean, and now we're training next to each other. She did not have a clue how to train. She didn't have an iota. And it was just like, it just got me thinking, because I'll often get comments from clients saying, no matter what I do, I'm training really hard and I never look the way I want to look, and in terms of the level of leanness or the amount of muscle that I want to have. And if you look at that girl who hasn't got a clue basically about what she's doing in the gym, every exercise could have been massively corrected. And would you say that it just comes down to genetics an awful lot of the time?
First thing I say on that is, like, people want to look like her. But then if you go to her and you ask her, like, from an honest perspective, she would say, she's not even thinking about how she looks. She's probably like, I wish I could train with the same technique as that person. I wish I had better form. I wish I understood how to train at a better level. So everyone has a concern. But in terms of genetics, it's very, very, it's going to be a small percentage of what it can do to impact. Like, we don't know about that girl's, like, she could have been really into gymnastics or camogie or something when she was young, and could have naturally had a high amount of muscle mass from a young age. Maybe it comes from her parents. Maybe there is a bit of genetics in it. And, look, maybe her style of training in the past was, maybe she might have done a different style of training that contributed to her being in great shape, right? Maybe her nutrition's absolutely spot on. The things we don't see on the gym floor. Her sleep could be spot on. So her recovery is really good. And even though her technique isn't great, she still gets results. Because people always look like, oh my God, look at her over there. She's in amazing shape. And everyone's like, what training is she doing? I want to see what she's training, what's she lifting. And then you realize, oh, I'm lifting the same weight as her. I'm doing the same kind of a structured plan as her. But people don't ever then go to say, maybe it's her sleep, maybe it's her nutrition. We always just look at the training for people who do compare. So I think from that point of view, there could be something in the past. But that girl, she has, the good shape already. But she's probably saying to herself, I wish I could lift as well as that person. I wish I could control my tempo a little bit better. I wish I was a little bit stronger. She has wants that she has as well, because she already has the good condition that someone else aspires to have.
Moving slightly off topic again, okay? So I asked one of my clients this before. It becomes a conversation, doesn't it, about your trainer. Should your trainer be in good shape, right? I asked my client this one day, because we were having this discussion around should your trainer be in great shape, and she was adamant, my trainer has to be in good shape, to look a certain way and whatever. And I said to her, right, what if you had a choice between one trainer who's in great shape, right, and you have another trainer who doesn't even look like they lift weights, or whatever way you want to describe it. But the trainer who is in great shape has, you see their Instagram, it's all about them. It's all about what way they look, all about their training, but they have no testimonials and they have no evidence that they can help people, progress in terms of, and we're talking about body fat loss here, obviously. But then you have this other person who doesn't look like they lift weights, doesn't look like they're a trainer, but they have lots of evidence in terms of them helping other people to achieve certain results. And again, in terms of body fat loss. And I said, who would you go to? And she said, I'd have to go with the person that's in great shape. I couldn't believe the answer, all right? But what do you think about that question itself, in terms of going to a trainer and that they have to be in great shape, and whatever great shape means to you?
I don't think you need to be in great shape. I think you need to be in decent shape. You have to practice what you preach to a degree. I'm not saying to be a good coach you have to have a six pack all year round. Because then, like I said, like about that last girl, you're going to have low energy all the time. You're going to be, if you're always in a deficit, like, your training is going to suffer, your mood's going to be poor, and that's no way of progressing. If a coach goes into a surplus for the year to put on a bit of muscle, and they lose the abs, that doesn't make them a bad coach. They don't forget all the knowledge that they've gained over the years. But the other side of the coin is, look, I think there has to be a level of responsibility on coaches as well to, like, if you're 5 or 6 kg overweight, if you're obese and you're a coach, I find, what example are you setting for your clients then? How I think it's there's a level of cheek to it to say, here, Mary, I noticed there you're going over your calories, but the coach then is overweight. I think there's a level of kind of neglect there, and I think that's not right. You have to lead by example to a degree. You don't have to be 7% body fat all year round either.
I know I love your answer because what I find when people are discussing this is that it's one or the other. It's like, no, it doesn't matter, or no, they have to be in unbelievable shape. But what you're saying is somewhere in between that they have to look after themselves. Like, you're not going to go to a mechanic who has a car that's always breaking down. Well, I like that answer because I agree with that answer as well, by the way. I do think like that we do need to practice what we preach. We do, like, for me to coach other people, I need to be in good headspace. I need to have good energy, and that all comes from sleep, looking after my nutrition, looking after my training. It doesn't mean that I have to have a six pack all year round and that I have to be low in energy because I want to sustain low levels of body fat, but somewhere in between. I think that's a very good point. Just before I know we were thinking about talking about one or two other things, but I say we're gone on long enough. But is there anything else that you want to add that we didn't talk about today, or anything else that you want to say that you would like to get across?
We'll have to do a part two to this episode as well to get all those other topics covered. But I think the biggest thing is like the relationship with the individual and their habits and their training and their nutrition. That's the key thing and the key takeaway for anyone listening to this today, is that they don't look at it as a rule book. Look at it as guidelines. Look at, here's what will benefit me. What's going to make me feel better? What's going to help me align with my long-term goals? That's what people should be looking at, rather than saying, I have to do this exactly this way because my friend did it that way, or the coach I worked with 7 years ago who's mad into bodybuilding told me to do it this way. And that's not anything against bodybuilding coaches either, by the way. But again, you know yourself from being in the industry a number of years, you go back to 2015, 2016, you were either eating chicken, broccoli, and rice, or you were a failure. That was like the way it used to be, right? And everything was so rigid back then. And it's evolved so much now. We have so much sustainability in the industry. We have so much flexibility in this. That is a positive thing. So if you can become more flexible, more sustainable, and still reach your goals, that is a really positive thing. And something that's hard to do if you came from a place of always feeling you had to be really strict with every single thing you ate, or always getting 6 sessions in a week and only giving yourself one rest day. Like you said earlier, you're probably better off doing 4 or 5 sessions a week, giving yourself a couple of rest days. If you feel like you always had to hit 10,000 steps is another one. That was a thing that came out over COVID. You had to hit 10,000 steps. Clients still say it to me, I only hit 9,000 steps there yesterday. I feel brutal. Why? Because some fella on Instagram said it 7 years ago or whatever it was. No, you don't. How much walking do you get out for the week? You got out for a walk 6 days of the week. That's brilliant. Stop looking at your exact steps. You mentioned it earlier. That person who did 9,000 steps and felt bad. Oh, I actually cut the grass as well. I did a bit of hoovering. I hung out the washing, and I did the shopping. That's a lot of steps or a lot of activity on top of that. It's probably better than doing the extra 1,000 steps that you wanted to make up. So don't zone in on the rigid, exact things you feel you have to hit every single day. Build the relationships, build some level of consistency, and be kinder to yourself.
Yeah, consistency over perfection,
Yeah,
isn't it?
100%. Anything you'd add on that last point that I kind of made?
Yeah, a couple of things. Like what you were saying there around habits, that's what this is all about, isn't it? It's about building habits. And habits, what I would add to that as well is that they're much harder to build than what people think they are. From my experience, people aren't going to build habits in 6 or 12 weeks. I often saw people think that they have habits built after a year, only for, say, some life-changing event to get in the way, and then they revert back to their actual habits, which would have been where they were like not in line with their goals, if you want to put it that way. So habits take a lot of time to build, and to be sustainable with them. Then the other thing I would say there, you mentioned, Joe, about the bodybuilding coaches. Like, if you want to be a bodybuilder, go to a bodybuilding coach. But what happens is that people that shouldn't be going to a bodybuilding coach go to a bodybuilding coach. If you want to live a happier, healthier life, find some balance between your social life and feeling healthier and fitter, come to the likes of yourself and myself. And that's what I'd add to that as well. Well, that's absolutely brilliant. I love the conversation. Tell people where they can find you.
So, as I said at the start, guys, my name is Eoin Cremin. Eoin Cremin Fitness is my business. You can find me on Instagram. I'm not really much of a TikTok head, so Instagram, you can find me there. I cater to, like you said there, Eric, helping people improve their habits. The majority of the people I work with are fat loss clients, people who want to lose weight, but they want to do it in a way that's sustainable for them, where they can still be doing it in a 6 month period. Enjoying the process is what I do. So you can find me on Instagram. If you want to connect with me, you can just send me a DM. My DMs are always open. If you're interested in coaching, you can click the link in my bio. You can sign up there by filling in the health questionnaire. And yeah, look, I think that's kind of me. Thank you so much for having me on. I loved the chat. It was brilliant. I love being your first guest as well. So yeah, I think it went pretty well.
Come here, that's absolutely brilliant. And again, thank you very much for coming on, being my first guest and all that. Absolutely brilliant. So I really appreciate it. So I suppose we leave it there. So thanks everyone for listening as always, and see you on the next one. Thank you.